Welcome back to Let's Talk Race and Mile. I'm your host, Harrison Paul, and today we are going to talk about Candace Owens being fired from the Daily Wire. This is a topic that I've just literally been, it's had me in a whirlwind at the moment. As you know, I think anybody who's reading this would have known already who fired her, you know what I mean? Kind of like who the boss was, who the CEO was. But I'm just quickly going to play the tape from when she surprisingly said 24 hours earlier on the Breakfast Club that Ben Shapiro did not have the power to fire her. A lot of people think that it is, the Israeli, of course, that had a lot to do with it, but her views on the Israel Palestine war. I don't like to call it a war either, but her views on that conflict that made her get fired. But actually, I think she kind of dared him and challenged him when she said on the Breakfast Club that she cannot be fired, or Ben Shapiro, right, essentially demoting or challenging Ben Shapiro's power. So we're gonna watch that so you guys can see it.
I love the way that you and Ben Shapiro are able to disagree, but then I guess still have a business relationship. Because I saw him recently tell you, I think this was maybe a few months ago. He told you to quit over your Israel coverage, your Palestine Israel coverage.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Well, he told me, the tweet that he responded to was actually just some biblical passages.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought that it was me saying that I had to choose money over I don't know how we interpret it, but it was definitely not. I just meant it as peace, calling for peace, because there was a video circulating of him calling me a disgrace and a faux professional or whatever it was. And I decided to choose peace. And then when I chose peace, he responded to the peace with not peace.
So why wouldn't he just fire you?
Well, as I explained on Tucker Carlson's show, Ben doesn't have the power to fire me. Hey guys, it's Candace. The rumors are true. I am free. Welcome to my locals page. So much to talk about. Obviously, I'm going to take a couple of weeks here just to rebuild and to refocus and to create something that is actually mine and something that can't be threatened or taken because it belongs to me. I can't tell you enough how much your support has meant to me over the years. We're just getting started. Join the locals page. Obviously here you can support me and my work as an independent journalist, as an independent podcaster. We're still going to be doing 5 days a week. There'll be tons of announcements coming in the next couple of weeks. And I guess the last thing I want to say is thank you. And for those of you that don't want to be on locals and just want to support in any capacity, you can head to gocandice.com. Thank you guys.
If there's one thing I want to get across, we can always speculate about, in terms of this firing, we can speculate about whether or not it was because she was black. Now, when I say that, I mean to say one of the most powerful things is she was getting herself in a sticky situation and being black. She was fighting against that rabbi and being black. Being black and doing something like that always is double the dose, right? And I think she had forgotten how much leverage she has, or how much, as I like to say on this show, how much lives she has. A guy like Donald Trump has about 200 lives because people are going to find a way to understand why you said it or what you could have said. Someone like Candace doesn't get as much lives as someone like Donald Trump. Donald Trump could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. They're not going to get the same. He's not going to get the same penalization as a black woman like Candace Owens. And I say a kinky hair black woman like Candace Owens, but I think she actually forgot that she's kinky haired because she flat irons it so much. That's not a job. That's an honest, obviously reference to the fact that I think Candace has forgotten that she's a kinky hair sister. But my point is, that is argument. We can argue that point, but at this very same time, is there a point? Because I think Megyn Kelly was fired from whatever job she had prior to her Megyn Kelly show. So stuff like that for me, it's it can be debunked. So I didn't want to go down too much. We can touch on a little bit of the fact that, I won't get into that too much because I just feel like that is that would be time consuming. But what I wanted to do as Black people today is actually discuss the fact that we've just watched over the last 7 days, possibly now. Don Lemon was sacked, and Candace Owens was sacked, and we watched them be sacked by the champions, if you want to say, the champions of free speech, which is the Ben Shapiro's, who just did a big, song about facts and not feelings, and he's just, this whole free speech type of guy. So for her to be fired because of that, I won't even get down to the whole idea of, what was anti-Semitism, or if it was or if it wasn't. Personally, I don't believe it was. I don't believe Candace would be that reckless. I do believe her heart was showing that, you could see that she was empathizing with the Palestinian people, and that was clear, right? So in that way, if that is seen as anti-Semitism, then of course she was being anti-Semitic on the books of the Ben Shapiro's and whatnot. But what I want to actually discuss today is the fact that we've just seen X, which is Elon Musk, and we've just seen Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro's situation. It lets you know that white people and the white man in general, this is when I will use the phrase the white man, he has always controlled the narrative, and he has always enjoyed controlling the narrative. In fact, he doesn't know a life where he doesn't control the narrative. These are one of the main reasons he hates the woke era. It's funny because, James Baldwin has an amazing saying. I'll put up on the screen for you to read it, but I'll paraphrase it right now. I've always had to watch. I know you better than you know me. I've always had to watch what you like, what you don't like, basically what he's saying. Like, it's always been my burden to make sure I get it right in your eyes. It's never been your burden to get it right in our eyes. And I feel like as, times go on, as the population of Black people, begin to strengthen ourselves and strengthen each other and find ourselves in positions where we can influence, or now that, companies and corporations feel as though they have to, ponder to the Black electric a little bit more, because it's not, it's not a case where it's like, who cares what the Black think? Things don't operate like that, like they used to. So you do have people like Piers Morgan who are so upset because they no longer have that sense of recklessness that they once were able to have, especially with anything else. And I've seen someone write this before, and I'm going to say it now. I think a lot of the transphobia that's happening actually is anti-Blackness. It's just a sense of like, no, we allowed that BLM to happen in 2019. Yeah, don't bring us, or 2020, don't bring us this, anything else. So they feel like, that was, trans rights were the final straw for them. But I think really the irritation began with the BLM, and BLM, I think, was the stamp where they began to realize that, this is not a small campaign that we just, it goes in one ear and out the other. Like, you just see it happen, like, give racism the red card or anything like that. It just happens. It's now becoming something that actually we, in many ways, have to bow to. We have to be obedient to. And that was something I feel they threatened them. That was a time that they felt threatened by that. But in that's to say that white people have always had the privilege of having hold of the narrative. I spoke to a brother in the gym today, and he was kind of course, angry, and he's upset about the corruption that they feel is going on in Africa. And it's so funny because I kind of went home and I was like, Mom, because my mom obviously being raised in Africa, born in Africa, and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, African felt like this today. And she was like, Harrison, if only you knew how much corruption is happening. Our home right now, our home is paying taxes, right? And we are paying taxes, and I've been having a toothache, right? And I had to go and pay £500 now just to fork out £500 on top of my taxes to get a tooth removed. I was struggling. I'm going through pain. There's so much corruption. Boris Johnson, like how do we in Africa, they don't even pay taxes. People are paying taxes here. You can't even get help when you need it, you know? People are pulling out their own teeth because, you know, the NHS, people who work for the NHS have been actually going to food banks because they can't afford to eat. Yet they told us all to stand outside our doors and clap, you know? Boris Johnson paid for, I think, a house for a young woman that he might have been sleeping with. He took money out of, and I think paid for an American girl out of the bank and never paid back the debt, something like that. I'll get her one day to re-clarify in my next episode. But she was kind of hitting me with this. And then she also said, Harrison, you know, Boris Johnson got an extension on his house and used the country's money to pay for that, you know. Allegedly, this is what he did. And there's so much corruption that happens in these Western countries that you don't, you know what I mean? Like the fact that we're all paying taxes and, you know, when we need help, really when we need help, we don't get it. You know what I mean? There's so much corruption happening here. But what we don't understand is that because these people are corrupt and because, it's a big part as well. She said, the corruption is so bad, they go to kill other world leaders. Can you imagine if a country goes and kill other world leaders and then cover it up? They cause havoc in all sorts of, you know, everyone's countries. And then when those people want to migrate here, then all of a sudden you say, don't come here after we've caused destabilization in your countries. These are the most corrupt people ever, but they've had control of the narrative. They've had control of the narrative. So what they tell you is that you are corrupt. They're not saying that a system here is corrupt. A system here is so corrupt. Even if we think of something as like, you know, water, or they lie to us that, we have to really purify the water. It's different stuff like this that they could be giving us. And she even mentioned, she goes, something as simple as internet. Kids need internet for school projects, for everything. Every home should have internet for free. But they don't want to do that because they want to make money off everything they can, you know? And even now, as the cost of living is going up, you can't help but think, where is the money going? You know what I mean? Like, where is the taxpayer money going, really? And the point is, and even if we think about where life has moved from since I was a kid, you know, when I was a kid, things were so cheap, and we don't see it as that now. But, you know, remember when, I don't know, 15 pounds was a lot of money if you think about it, because I was looking at situations here. I was looking at this a document that I was reading of you know, an Irish slave owner who had left money behind for the children of Limerick. And I remember reading it, and it said, you know, I leave money behind, 15 pounds for the children of Limerick. And then you kind of think like, okay, 15 pounds, that doesn't sound like anything, but that's how much the inflation of us as a world has grown to that place, that money now, 15 pounds is a lot of money. You know, there are so many things that are corrupt that we've just kind of normalized, like, yeah, that's the way it is, you know. And we can't talk about the so-called living crisis happening in Ireland, housing crisis. Apparently there's a lot of empty buildings. We're going to have that conversation on another day. But the point I'm trying to say is that if we were to have control of their media, if we were to have control of the minds of the world, and even when you think about, another thing I was saying to the brother today, it's like, when we say like, Ronaldo, which he's one of my favorite player, is the best player in the world. UK is the best, you know, Premier League is the best league in the world. You know, I remember my dad used to say, what world is that? You know, it's the world that they've created. When they say, this thing is the best in the world, that thing is the best in the world, or this statistic in the world, it's always on a European scale, a Western scale. You know, there's not African people mostly taken in that data, or did I say the oldest woman to live the longest? You know, they get that data off of a Western person. They're not going to go into the rural areas and ask these, you know, do these census of people in the rural Africa, or maybe rural South America. All these things are within their idea, and we judge everything based off their scope. They had the chance this whole time to create the scope. So when I sit on this page, what we're doing, what we're pushing against is our narrative to create the scope. You know, one of the famous quotes, I'm going to put a picture of her on the screen, but this woman, I put her on at the end of my song, is like, the conqueror writes history. They came, you know, and they wrote, you know, they conquered and they wrote. And what we don't understand is the power in this. If we were the ones who got to write about it, let's say they conquered, but we wrote about it, and our side of the story got to be the one that was the main side of the story, I'm telling you that it would be something that would have been taught in schools. It would have been something that was everything. But one of the main flaws that happened is that even when independence came, we weren't allowed to teach our children what had happened. Can you imagine? When independence came, do you know that there's kids still in Africa who are not being taught what actually went down or how things have transpired? We are still teaching our kids in Africa how their version of what happened to us. So what I'm here to say is, like, the Western world has enjoyed controlling the narrative for this long. And what frustrates me is when Black people honestly think that controlling the narrative is something that's not important. It's one of the most, if not the most important factor to this life, is able to control the narrative. Is able, because when you control the narrative, you control how people think. So they have manipulated, check this out, they manipulated you then to feel like, oh, you're overly sensitive. So the free speech rally and the Elon Musk and whatever is saying, listen, we have now become a society that is way too sensitive. I should be able to have blackface in the cartoon and you laugh with me. I should be able to have racist innuendos. I should be able to have the likes of Donald Trump and Boris Johnson, who had horrific quotes about the fact that Africa should still be under British rule. We should be able to have these things, racist moments in passing, and you should not have to complain about them. Your inferiority should be accepted in this society. And now when we push back on that one, create our own narrative, all of a sudden Candice Owens is fired. All of a sudden now, by the way, I'm not saying Candice Owens wants to fight for our agenda. So let me clarify that. Candice Owens was just speaking against an agenda that went along with what Ben wanted. And he fired her. So how legit is that free speech? They're going to, honestly, and guess what? No one will bat an eyelid. We'll forget about it in a week and we will still champion Ben Shapiro as a free speech type of guy. Oh yes, free speech, but of course he's going to defend his own. But what about us? Why can't we defend Black people? Why can't we be like the Jews? Why can't we sit up there and say, I don't care what you think is not anti-Semitic. If I say it's anti-Semitic, that is it. And what we now need is unity to band together where we make our decisions that's racist, yeah, we won't give you a job. We will put you out of a job if you do that. But because we understand that we're trying to fit within their narrative, fit within their guidelines of what we can and cannot say, we have now internalized that. And when you see another brother who's fighting racism, oh man, just cut that out. Just cut that out. But how I'm seeing is that I'm in my own narrative. Where I complain or make a big deal out of what I want to make a big deal out of. So when these people were creating the narrative, they were creating a narrative about Africa, they were creating a narrative about the poverty, and they were not creating the narrative about their corruption. They were not telling the truth about what they've been doing to other countries. They've been not doing that. And what I'm doing is I'm saying they're not as clean as they look. But all of a sudden, it's tiring to hear a brother tell the truth about who they really are. So what should be said then? What narrative should we hold for ourselves? Hustle hard, be so good they can't reject you. That's not what they're holding. Boris Johnson here in the UK was giving jobs to people who he shouldn't have been giving jobs to, who had no business in the position. I think Tony Blair's son, I'll put the clip on here, he said that he got a position and most of the people who got a position didn't even earn it. I'll put it up on the screen for you guys to see it.
When I joined my investment banking graduate scheme at Morgan Stanley, I was surrounded by a group of people who nearly all had arts degrees. They were nearly all white, nearly all men, and most crucially, actually, they were basically all from privileged backgrounds, and we had no divine right to be there. I learned everything I knew about corporate debt and derivatives on the job, because my ancient history bachelor's and my international relations master's did not teach me about markets or how companies raise financing or anything else, but they were deemed a prerequisite. We're moving beyond that now, which is great and is only a progressive move.
But you've also...
And I had another brother talking about, white people work off merit. And he's just speaking the rhetoric that he has been told, that we are upright, we work off merit. Here is a brother saying they do not work off merit. Here is a white man saying, no, I was not put here off merit. I've seen another video of a lady who just got picked for the House of Lords, and she said, yeah, in the House of Lords, we just pick a friend of a friend. So you have this vision or this idea that he does everything ethically and he is this some sort of no. And I was so happy when my mom kind of reminded me of that. Like, you're just believing what he said. And then you're internalizing that, which is even worse because then you're holding that belief for yourself. Now, how are you going to believe in yourself? How are you going to put back into your community? How are you going to trust to build with your community if you have a warped perception on your own community? And if everyone has a warped perception on each other, we're just perpetuating brokenness and loneliness. So my point today is, I'm not getting into the drama of what was anti-Semitic, what is and what isn't. My point is this. Can you not see how X just fired Don Lemon? Can you not see how Candace Owens was fired from the Daily Wire when they touched and pushed against their so-called free speech ideology? It's not about free speech. It's about their speech. Meanwhile, you, black man, just want to say, listen, I don't want to focus too much on it. Why can't you say the same thing to Ben? Why couldn't Ben Shapiro and the CEO of the Daily Wire, why couldn't they exercise the same thing they have manipulated you to exercise? Don't think too much about these things. Okay, Ben, how about this? Don't think too much about anti-Semitism. Just let Candace do her job. Just you be so good, Ben, that everyone can reject that you're the best. This is all the things that we said. It's still a fair game. You're seeing things when they're not there. You are seeing things which he was. And my message then to Candace Owens is one day she will realize. One day she will realize. But unfortunately, Candace has put herself in this position. Approval of white people has meant so much to Candace. I could go on about Candace, but even as I'm on camera, I don't feel good trashing a sister on camera, although I'm disappointed about who she is. And I'm disappointed about the black community and how so quickly we have forgotten everyone who justified every killing that happened in America. And I was looking back on Candace Owens, old videos where she used to be called the Red Pill Black. And she came up off of trying to debunk everything pro-black. All the systems that were, every movement that we had that was trying to debunk these narratives about us, trying to set a new narrative for black people. She was a number one person. And she was founded on the grounds of being the perfect informant. Don't worry, she'll keep going. We'll see where the road takes her. I really do think it will not take her to a very good place. We'll see how far that road takes her. But yeah, that's all I got to say for today. Thank you so much for watching. I just really hope that black people will understand that little do you know, they care a lot about their narrative. They care a lot about control. And they have manipulated you to just kind of say, okay, I won't focus too much on having control. Right now, we are in a war for the minds of the people. For the minds of the people. The minds of the population. The minds of the world. One of the last things I'll say is the brother said, we're talking about why do you think, black people have, this perception about themselves that, that negative perception about themselves. And one of the things he said was like, African people back home still have internet, still have phones a little bit, still have things. People with somebody around you will have something to understand, maybe a TV, to understand what the world is happening around them. So then it adds to their self-loathing to know, wow, that world is out there happening, and here I am, in a bondage in a way. Guys, but imagine if they were seeing a TV informing them that the people who were continuing and doing neocolonialism and destabilizing their countries and constantly pumping that image into them. Do you think we'll be having wars between Igbo and Yoruba? Do you think if TV shows were constantly pumping what they are doing and the corruption that they have and the way that they're trying to bring that corruption into Africa, do you not think we would have a revolution? Do you not think Igbo and Yoruba would say, listen, I seen that 6 o'clock show as well. Forget about Yoruba and Igbo. We need to go and fight against it. We need to make sure these people don't come and do their rubbish here. This is the power of having narrative. 6 o'clock news, everyone here is being indoctrinated. And let's talk before iPhones. Let's talk before everything. Everyone's being indoctrinated. Newspapers, billboards. The narrative matters most. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe.
And I'm on a mission for you.